Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I am thrilled to have my special guest with us on the show today, Yarona Boster. Yarona is a certified speaking coach, TEDx and international speaker, two times best-selling author, and a podcast host. And I'm so excited she's with us on the show today. Thank you so much for being with us, Yarona. It's an absolute pleasure.
Oh, it's so lovely to be here, Valerie. I'm very excited for our conversation.
Me too. Well, Yarona, let's start off with telling us about yourself and about your mission.
Yeah. Ah, my biggest mission is to help the world communicate better. I was recently talking to somebody, and she said it feels like communication has become a superpower these days. And I don't believe that that should be the way it is because we can all learn it. It is a behaviorally learned skill, which means we all have the capacity to learn how to communicate. But where are we going wrong? And so my biggest drive is to help people in that respect. And I think about communication like the umbrella under which I work, specifically with a couple of different types of people. On the one side, I work with public speakers and people who are in public facing roles that do require a lot of speaking to the public, leaders, CEOs, executives, and so on. On the other side of the fence, I work with parents. And why? Because parents are leaders too. They are raising another human. They are bringing another human into a place of existence, and they don't necessarily know always what they're doing from a space of what they want to be doing. More often than not, one of the things I see with parents is that they know first what they don't want to do. They acknowledge, oh, my parents did this wrong and this and this and this. I don't want to be like that. And it's great. It's great when you can acknowledge that. But if you don't know what you do want to do, what happens when you end up in states of heightened stress, emotionally vulnerable and emotionally heightened moments, you fall back on what you know. So where communication comes in is it's often in the unspoken signals that we send to our children that they pick up the most on. It's in the nonverbal cues. It's in the things that we don't say that they make assumptions about. And that requires us to be able to better communicate with our children, to let them know through both verbal and nonverbal cues what it is we hope for, what it is we want to try to achieve, what it is, how we want to try to guide them.
Language, this like nonverbal communication. And I absolutely agree that that is so powerful, yet we overlook that. How important a smiling face is versus a frowning face.
Right.
It's so simple, but yet so powerful. And sometimes hard work, I feel like, to
Mm.
do. A lot.
Very hard work.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm not saying it's easy. In fact, in my opinion, parenting is the hardest role a person can ever take on with no training. And so I say to myself, well, why is that true? Why is it that someone in my field, with my background, knows what the early domains, the five domains of early childhood are?
mhm.
Why shouldn't everybody know that? I was speaking to a congressman once and I said to him, if we could get the five domains of early childhood, basic core human development into our education system, curriculum as a core component to our education, it would change the nature of the way we both see ourselves developing and others around us developing. It would change the nature of how we become parents when we become parents, saying to ourselves, oh, my kid is lying in the middle of the grocery store freaking out because he couldn't get a toy. I know what's happening here. Instead of being super reactive and going like, oh my God, and jumping in with this reactivity instead of a more naturally, a more cognizantly guided responsiveness.
Mm.
And that's what we all need. We all need it. Far as a species, there's a lot of things we do just to simply survive, mostly psychologically. A lot in most developed countries, it's more psychological survival than it is physical survival these days. But it is still physical survival. And for some people, especially in the mass wage gap that we have now, there's a lot of that physical survival. When I was in the early intervention system, one of the things I would tell my staff all the time is we have to meet our parents where they're at. We have to meet our families where they're at. You might want the very best for them, and you might want them to really learn what you're trying to teach them about how to engage with their child, how to do this differently and that differently to help their child's, communication development, to help their motor developments, to help their cognition, to help their self-help and adaptive skills, their social emotional development. But they may be worried about getting food on the table. They may be worried about keeping a roof over their head. They're in true survival mode. So, no judgment here. That's not allowed. And we meet them where they're at and we give them the simplest, most easiest ways to do just one little tiny thing. And this is how I approach all parenting. One tiny step at a time, one manageable, doable step at a time. Work on that one thing. Let's say the one thing is, for the next 6 months, I just want my child to be able to sit at the dinner table with us and eat with us without having to have an iPad in front of them. That's actually a really big thing. So
Yeah.
when in early intervention, especially because it's birth to three, we're breaking that down even into these teeny tiny steps. And this is what I want parents to approach it with. How can I break that down even further? And what can I do to break this down even further? Okay, I'm not going to start cold turkey because cold turkey never works, especially if you've had a child who's overstimulated by a device and their sensory input is all askew. Their expectation, they need that dopamine hit. At this point, they're seeking it. They're in dopamine seeking mode and they need that. So how do we start to reduce it? Okay, whereas normally your kid was sitting there with their face in the iPad for the entire dinner and you had to scoop the food in their mouth. Okay, next meal, we're simply going to try to say, okay, we usually sit here for 30 minutes. So for just 3 or 5 of those minutes, we're going to not start with the iPad. Just for 3, 5 minutes. I'm going to put a timer on for 3, 5 minutes. I just want you to focus on getting your spoon. And we're going to play a little game about the spoon. And we're going to make it fun and engaging. Because that's one thing that people don't understand.
Mhm.
When dopamine is involved, everything else becomes dopamine related. Everything else becomes, I'm seeking, how do I make this fun? How do I make this engaging? If you're in that constant connectivity place where you're constantly getting a reward hit when you're watching a device, and man, oh man, are they good at that,
Mhm.
then you can't just sit there and have your kid be sitting there like this and think that it's perfectly that they're going to be okay with that.
Yeah.
No, you need to make it fun. You need to replace the thing that was providing all those dopamine hits to something else that's going to provide a bit of that as well.
Mhm.
Does
Mhm.
that make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's so important. And I think that is so, I like the way how you talk about it from a dopamine standpoint and how play for children in particular is the way they learn and making that fun and taking a different pathway. And like I know, kind of oversimplifying the whole dopamine thing, but at the same time, it
Yeah.
is like practicing another pathway of something different. And how can
Right.
you do that in baby
Right.
steps? And I love to like break down, a baby step for me sometimes when I can't think of anything else is in this moment right now, can I choose? What do I choose? Love over fear? Because I think fear is so like
Mhm.
just so much of an underlying thing of everything.
Yeah.
So choosing love over fear right now in this moment, and then the next moment, next moment. And, that's so much easier said than done. But the more we practice that, the more we strengthen not only, like our own pathways, but also we help with those baby steps of whatever we're working on.
Just having this conversation yesterday. Uh, we, when it comes to survival, as parents, we're not no longer just thinking about our survival, we're also thinking about our progeny survival.
Yeah.
And that's not an ego thing, that's actually a survival mechanism. How do we survive what we know to be eventually ending?
Yeah.
And a part of it's the human condition. That's what people don't understand about development. We are conditioned as a species to survive at all costs. And a part of that is the progeny. So if now we switch our worry over ourselves surviving to our worry over our children surviving, and we think to ourselves, what's the thing when everybody argues over breastfeeding or formula feeding, and then there's that fed is best,
Yeah.
that line, fed is best. And it's true. It is true because you want your child to survive.
Mhm.
And that is the height of where everything comes from. That it's the basis of where everything comes from in the way that we engage in our world. But here's a really interesting piece of this puzzle. When we are infants, when we are little, there is one thing that humans have. Instinctively, we are born with this, and it is a part of our survival mechanism. And somehow we forget it when we get older. Curiosity and exploration.
Mhm.
When you think about the world, when you think about a young infant, what's the reason they roll over? Well, because they're curious about how that would feel, because they want to reach for something, they want to grab for something. They hear a voice, they hear a sound, they hear this.
Mhm.
In the youngest ages, we are actually in curiosity and exploration mode. That is a key component to our human development. If we weren't curious or explorative, we wouldn't survive because we wouldn't be seeking for the things outside of us. We would just lay there like a blob and we would just be like, okay, whatever, you know? But no, we seek things naturally. Because we seek things naturally, we have to allow ourselves, we as parents have to allow that curiosity and exploration to be an entire component to the way we're raising our children. It has to be a part of this. But when we put a device in front of our kids, we're actually cutting off that curiosity and exploration. We're cutting off that ability to do that because we're already bypassing curiosity and exploration for the dopamine response, for the reward center. I just want the reward. I just want the reward. I just want the reward.
Mhm.
We get conditioned into that. What does that mean? We have to decondition that. So, one of the things I remember seeing that I was really upset about was this period where these videos were coming out where these parents would go in and their kids would be playing video games and they would unplug it.
Mhm.
And the kids would flip out and the parents would be laughing.
Mhm.
Here's the thing though, video games like that require that give that immediate dopamine hit, that reward system, they're hitting the same center in the brain as drugs and alcohol.
Mhm.
So essentially, when we're giving our kids free access to all of that stuff, it's like we're giving them drugs.
Mhm.
And now you're just removing the drug all of a sudden from a drug addict,
Mhm.
from somebody who's gotten to a place where they have created a pathway of craving to that video, to that gaming, to that device, to whatever that is. Social media for some girls, it's a dopamine reward system because they're very social. Women are excessively social. Men are social too. We are a social species. We are a communal species. That's one of the ways we survive as well. So I couldn't tell you how disappointed I was in watching that.
Mhm.
These parents laughing as they took away their kid's drug and their kid flipping out, or the parent screaming at them, get off the device, get off, and just unplugging it.
Mhm.
People thinking that arguing with your child to just will make them stop. I don't know about you, but I have never in my life been yelled at, even as an adult, and suddenly been like, "Oh, you're so right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah." No,
Mhm.
no, 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 no. That's not what happens. When we get yelled at, we usually kind of either we go into our hyperarousal response. So we fight, we flight, we freeze, we fawn, we faint. We do these things because now we're being threatened.
Yeah. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
if we're in a comfort zone, we often fight or we flee.
Mhm.
So it's very interesting to me that I shouldn't say interesting. It's very sad to me because I feel that if parents really understood what's happening in the brain, what's happening in the stage of development, they would not be as, they wouldn't take as many actions, inappropriate actions like that as they do. Exactly. I want parents to think about it from a really simple perspective. Imagine your favorite food is in front of you. I mean, your favorite food. The thing that you're like, oh, I'm going to enjoy this meal so much. Piece of cake, some pasta dish, something. You're like, oh, I'm already salivating just thinking about taking that first bite. And you start to dig in and you're enjoying it so thoroughly. And somebody comes in and grabs your plate and pulls it away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How would you feel? You'd be like, what? On top of the fact, on top of that, you're also yanking away someone's autonomy.
Yes. Yeah.
You're yanking away their ability to make decisions for themselves. So, the most proactive way you can engage it is to help your child by showing them other ways and by giving them a sense of control and autonomy over the decisions you make cohesively as a family together. Like in our house rules, in our home, we have no tech night. We're trying to change, we used to call it no tech night. We're trying to change it to family activity night, just so that it becomes, it sounds nicer, right? But we have like a night of just family activity. My son is so calm, he's so relaxed. We play board games, we, go out somewhere and just have fun together. We color, we draw. It's really relaxed and slower. And a big part of that slowing down is also the appreciation of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're in a state where you're constantly having a lot of stimuli, your brain gets used to that stimuli and it expects that all over the place. So it's one of the reasons why we're like, oh God, I'm so bored. When you're not doing 10 million things like scrolling at the same time as trying to, yeah, being at dinner at the same time as trying to have a conversation with somebody. We have this need to be doing a bazillion things at once because we made ourselves get used to that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's neither helpful for ourselves nor our children.
Absolutely. I think that's so important and such an important thing for us as a society to realize. I think that affects so much. And how do we, baby steps work on those things? And Yorona, I would love to ask you, like, I know that you have already published two amazing books. Can you please tell us about those, as well as you're working on another book as well? And I'd love to hear more about all of that.
Oh, sure. So I've had a lot of experiences in my life, a lot of experiences that other people would categorize as really awful, really, really painful, really um, tragic or traumatic is what a lot of people would say. I firmly believe that experience is experience until we decide what we make of it. I'm not saying that we can't look at an experience and say, oh my God, that was so painful. And I'm not saying that none of my experiences were not painful. What I'm saying is that I have the ability to choose how I want to perceive the experiences I've had. And I can, on any given day, one day I could be really sad. Another day I could be like, wow, that was a really great learning opportunity. So I had the opportunity twice to be a part of a collaborative book effort, a co-authorship book, twice, two different books. One is called The Gifts of Pain, and I love just that title, The Gifts of Pain, because the reality is pain is telling us something. That's the intention of pain, whether that is physical pain or psychological pain, it's trying to tell us something. And when we seek to learn what we can from the pain, it transitions the way we view that experience. So in The Gifts of Pain, I wrote about my infertility struggles. I had 10 years, I will be very brief on this, 10 years of infertility struggles that were bookended by two ectopic pregnancies and emergency surgeries, in which I lost my right fallopian tube in the last one, and three miscarriages between those 10 years and a failed cycle of IVF. That cost a lot of money. And I really did not think that we were going to have children. And I had to truly close that chapter, not close it with a little bookmark in there, not kind of like let the door have like, oh, just a little crack open. I really had to say, I don't think children are going to be in our future. I think I need to find something else. And something I say all the time to people is you cannot control always the things that happen to you. That's just not the way life works. You can think you have control over the things that happen to you, but that's a fallacy. But what you can control, what you can do is choose how you want to move forward. And I was determined not to be angry and bitter and resentful for those infertility struggles. Even as one of the miscarriages happened when I was taking care of my dying mother. And that was the other piece. So the other book, called Cracking the Rich Code. And when we think about rich, we think about technically money, but really being rich can be rich of resources. It can be rich of life lessons, knowledge, wisdom, all of these beautiful things. So I wrote my chapter in that called The Investment Every Parent Needs. And this one came from my life of loss. The amount of losses I've had in my life has been excessive, not just the infertility struggles, but a lot of death. I've been surrounded by a lot of death. And I took care of both of my parents until their deaths. My niece and nephew passed, my brother, my father-in-law, and those are the top ones. And then I've been lost friends. I've lost other family members way too early. And majority of this happened before I even turned 40. So death has surrounded me for a very long time. My father was a Holocaust survivor. So I kind of was born into the world with a little bit of a deeper understanding of the cruelty of life, the temporary nature of life, a lot of depth of what it is to be human. And that's always shaped a part of who I am. But one of the things that I was again determined was, okay, what do I learn from these losses? And I realized something, and this is where my TEDx talk came from. It was about loss in parenting. And I realized this, I had this light bulb moment as I was in the early intervention system working with my staff. One of the things my staff, I started to hear this running refrain. They were like, Yarona, they're not listening. They just don't understand. They want to coddle their kids. They don't want to tell them no. They don't want to give them boundaries and and it was this constant thing. And I was like, why is that? And then I realized something. I realized that when parents don't say no, when they don't give them rules and boundaries and guidelines and structure to live by, what they do is they dismantle their children's capacity to process and accept loss. Because here's the thing, if you look at life from a loss perspective, I call it foundational losses. When you're young, the losses are small. They're maybe the loss of a favorite toy or blankie or, you lost it, your favorite one. And even if your parents rush out and try to replace it, or try to conceal it or try to run away and like, oh, no, you don't need to deal with that. Then you lose out on getting a good grade, even though you studied hard. You don't get into the after school program or the extracurricular activity you wanted. You don't get into the college you wanted. You lose a relationship. You lose a friendship. You lose a job. You lose a home even. Like all these things, these are what I call foundational losses. They are always foundational to our living. They are what other people might call the struggles, the hurdles, the natural like pieces of life that we just have to, we're going to hit a wall, we're going to hit a wall, it's going to happen. How do you pick yourself back up? But when I started to think about it from a loss perspective, I was able to start talking to these parents. And I said, here's the thing. You could become a billionaire. You could give your child everything they could ever want, possibly need, possibly desire, everything. You could set them up for life. But there is one thing you cannot stop them from experiencing, and that is the loss of you. Because in the natural course of the events of life, in the natural design of it, parents go first. And because that is the case, when you try to shield them from life's natural losses, you disable them. You dismantle their capacity to simply process the loss. Okay, I got to process that our cat died. We got to process this together. Not, the cat went to a farm. And by the way, that's a loss too. So the cat's gone regardless. you know, um, you're not really protecting them from anything. What you're doing is you're weakening their capacity to handle these things. And and then inevitably they lose you. And because you've set them up for that weakening, they fall apart. They cannot, they don't believe they can survive without you. They don't believe that they can handle the emotional pain and they call it trauma. Well, losing a parent is a natural part of the life cycle. It's not a trauma. It's not a trauma. It's normal and natural. What's abnormal and not natural is the other way around. Losing a child. And I think that what people don't understand is that when we try to rail against what is normal and natural, we're doing ourselves a disservice because we're softening our ability. I don't know if you've ever heard of the term anti-fragile. And it's a beautiful term to express what humans really are. We are anti-fragile. When we actually are stressed, when we are faced with difficulties, we can actually become stronger for it. But that's only if our parents are willing to allow that. And I've seen so many parents who are like, no, 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 no. Let me protect my child from this. Let me protect them from this. And it's because they're more afraid of their child's pain. As parents, we get dual pain, right? We experience our pain and then we experience our children's pain. And we don't want to see our kids cry. Oh, no, I don't want to see you cry. No, 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 don't cry. You're going to be okay. I'll get you a new. I know you dropped your ice cream cone. I'll get you a new one. And it'll be okay. You're okay. You're okay. When we're doing that, it's because we're uncomfortable with the discomfort that's inside of us in the face of our child's pain. So, what I try to get parents to understand, and in this book, I wrote the investment every parent needs is to talk about when we die, not if, when. Have that as, and by the way, there's an easy way, I shouldn't say easy, but there is a way to do this with them as young as my child was when he experienced his first loss, which was before the age of 4. We lost our cat. Um, and one of the things he told me after she died, we were having this conversation, and here's what I categorize it as to have a conversation about loss. He was refusing to put on his own shoes. He's like, no, mommy, you do it for me. You do it for me. And one of the things I said to him was, Connor, mommy and daddy are not always going to be here to put on your shoes for you. You need to do it for yourself. So self-help and adaptive skills is a great space to help them understand they've got to do it for themselves. Why? Because there's not always going to be someone around to do it for them. It's a really simple way to think about the broader perspective of loss. So we were having this conversation, and I said to him, um, we got into this whole thing, and I said, how are you going to feel when mommy and daddy aren't here? And he said, I'll be okay. I said, oh, that's great. And he said, yeah, because you'll be here. And he pointed to his heart, forever in my heart. You'll live here. And I knew then that he understood what I had been trying to teach him. Just because we lose someone's physical space in our lives doesn't mean we lose them forever. We can keep them alive. And I did a talk about this called Moving Forward with Loss. There are very strategic ways to keep them alive with us. And I will never forget when my father passed, one of our neighbors came and she gave me a card, and it stuck with me till today. It's been 14 years now. And it said, to live in the hearts of others is to never truly be gone. And that was exactly what I needed in that moment. Not to be told, oh, you'll be okay. Oh, he's not suffering and in pain anymore. Oh, everything happens for a reason. These are things that people say to make themselves feel better, not us. And so one of the things that I try to get parents to understand is that it's not about making loss happy. It's about processing that pain without trying to cover it with other things, without trying to conceal it with other things. It's about sitting in the pain with them. When we lost my father-in-law and my son wasn't even 6, this was another really hard moment for him, and I had to, okay, all right, we're going to process this together. And that's a whole story, but it reminded me very much so that what I've been trying to teach him is vital. It's not to say he's not still very loving and attached to us. He has a strong attachment to us, but at every turn I try to help him understand the, and I know this is really hard because at his age, technically, he doesn't really understand the existential nature of life. Right? Existential awareness only starts to come in more like 12, 13, 14. And then existential crisis hits, and then we go through this whole process. But in little ways, we can prepare them. And this is very vital. And in that book, I also give people the literal things to do as you get older, like making sure you have an advanced directive, durable power of attorney, so an advanced directive, a living will, durable power, somebody has durable power of attorney. They know exactly what you want, and not just know, but it's all written down, that you should have your funeral taken care of. Because here's the end result of that. When we take care of all of these things, when we assure all of these things, we take away one of the hardest things to do, which is the decision-making process from somebody else. We allow our loved ones to just sit in the pain without having to worry about the logistics or fight over it. Because one of the things people split families divide over is death. Oh, I wanted to keep them plugged in. You didn't want to keep them plugged. Da, da, da. Well, if that's taken care of, if you've already made those decisions and have that in writing, nobody needs to take care of it. Nobody needs to make a decision over that. You've already made that decision. How you want to be buried, or cremated, or where and what, and all of these things. If it's all written down, you're just following the instructions of the person. When we have everything set up for ourselves, our loved ones just simply follow what we directed them to do. And it is the kindest thing you can do for the people you love, is to leave them with no doubt as to what you want. So they can just follow the instructions and be in their pain and experience their pain fully. And that is really hard for a lot of people to kind of get past.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, even though we are a very communal species, we are also a very autonomous species. So, as an autonomous person, the one thing I get to decide in my life is what do I want to do with this? There's one thing I get to decide in life, right? What do I want to do with this? At this breath, and the next breath, and the next breath. So what we do with it really matters in the here and now, in the present moment, because we're not promised tomorrow. We're not promised our next breath. But when we get really accepting about that, when we really accept that space, then everything we do with our kids, everything we do with our work, everything we do with our life's purpose and passions has greater meaning and value to us.
Mm-hmm.
And it matters more to us. And it changes the nature of the way we engage with other people, with the things we do, all of this stuff. And that is the greatest value we can give our kids, because time is not promised. So you could say to yourself, oh, you know what? I'll go to the park with them tomorrow. I'm too tired today. And sure, give yourself grace if you're really exhausted. But make sure you go to the park with them tomorrow. Don't keep pushing it off and pushing it off, because there may be a day where it doesn't come. In fact, it doesn't come. And you don't want to have those kinds of regrets when that day comes.
To share with our listeners as we wrap up here, where they can find you, where they can learn more about your upcoming book, and anything else you'd like to share before we go.
Absolutely. My upcoming book is called Unspoken Signals: Essential Parenting Skills to Raise Emotionally Secure Children, and hopefully that should be released in early 2026. And you can find me on LinkedIn, easy peasy, or you can go to my website, yaronaboster.com. And please, and I say this with all absolute authenticity, realistically. I mean it when I say this. Message me. Message me. I will respond. I always do. People are always shocked. And they're like, wow, I didn't think you'd respond. I do. I always will. I always do.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much.